Well, hey folks, it's your old pal King Waspinator. Welcome back to Total Party Skills. Be sure to hit like and subscribe. I'm going to do a deep dive today into the lore of Rift's Dinosaur Swamp, which I frequently mention as being my favorite of all of the various starting areas on Rift's Earth. Due in large part to a couple different factors. It's one of the most apocalyptic feeling areas. There's like little in the way of civilization. Characters actually have to manage their supplies and their ammo a lot more carefully than they do in some of the more civilized areas of North America and beyond. Like the one city that's there doesn't even really have a government, and that would be Char, which is the remnants of Charlotte, North Carolina. A good chunk of like the coastline is further inland than it is in our modern times. So you have stuff like Durham and Raleigh is now like our coastal areas. The Appalachian Mountains are, crisscrossed with ley lines, and they've turned into a de-shifting zone where the landscape just periodically just randomly changes, almost like it's overlapping with other mountain ranges and other dimensions or something like that. And here and there you get like these little towns that'll kind of appear and then disappear, kind of like Brigadoon kind of stuff. And the two towns that are like most noted for like the northern parts of Carolina and the mountains are Ash and Bone. Ash being on top of Asheville. Bone is kind of like just a little crappy bandit town. Ash is a bit more interesting in that it's got a kind of a weird trickster dragon named Nero that's in charge of it. Nero also has some dealings with the Cherokee Nation a bit further to the south in South Carolina. Where they know him as Atsil and believe him to be like a trusted, wise advisor, even though he's actually a pretty young, kind of self-centered dragon. Also in Northern Carolina, there's like a small little like necromancer kingdom, really tiny, imaginatively called the Kingdom of the Dead. There's like a lone necromancer named Silas who lives there. He mostly just wants to be left alone. There's a few DBs out of DBs of North America that I went through that actively say that you can find them in the Dinosaur Swamp. There's a bunch of others that you can add, but in particular for ones that you're likely to find in the Carolinas around Char for characters coming down to enter the area or just as the starting zone. You'll find stuff like the Drizzt, who are kind of like a grasshopper people who live in grasslands. There's the Idy, who are kind of a swamp-dwelling, kind of like catfish-looking kind of aliens. They're actually a decent race for player characters. And then there's the Akaisi, who, if you want a softer, kinder, gentler type of sim van, where they're still barbaric and are willing to go to war, but they're an alien race that has like a monster riding kind of theme, but they're not like feared and renowned as cannibaloid, barbarians who, like intentionally try to eat intelligent races and stuff. So, in that way they're a bit more chill. There's several mutant barbarian tribes that live in the area that descended from the original human population, most of which have themed themselves around what they vaguely remember of local college football teams from before the coming of the Rifts. There's around the Durham and Raleigh area, the ruins around there along the coast. Three different tribes are kind of constantly kind of competing with each other to gain control of the region. You got the Devil Horde, the Wolf Runners, and the Rams. The Rams are like probably like the smallest and the most contemplative, wisest, noble of intention and spirit of the three. The Devil Horde are barbarian raiders, for lack of a better term. The Wolf Runners are more like your savage berserker kind of types. If you're just trying to like stream down, there's more stuff to read about all these guys, but also they don't get described very much in the books, but there is reference to another tribe in the area called the Bull Hounds. They're the ones that specialize in converting the steel trees. There's this big forest of alien MDC trees that grows just south of Char that's kind of basically like serves as like a border barrier between Char and Camp Cherokee, which is kind of to the southwest. And the Bull Hounds, like they live in that area. They know how to like these trees down and to work the bark to be able to make, you know, weapons and armor and kind of stuff out of them. But there's not a whole lot of detail given into them beyond that. There's a couple of other Native American tribes that are in the Carolinas that are they're smaller and not as organized as the Cherokee that are in the northern part that you're likely to encounter when players first enter the area. Those would be the Catawba and the Lumbee, both of which kind of live in the marshy areas near the coastline. There's like a couple of races from DBs in North America that are mentioned to have that probably live in the Appalachians, so you might encounter them around Ash or Bone or further south into the Georgian Appalachians, and those would be the Opsidae and the Adna. You would need a copy of Cimmerian Nation or one of the two of the original Archie source books for Rifts to bring in Cimmerians. Even if you're setting it prior to 109 and the declaration of the Cimmerian Nation, the Cimmerians were already like establishing themselves all up and down the seacoast, and their lowest part of their range comes down into like, you know, North and South Carolina. So there's two tribes of Cimmerians to account for up along the border between Carolina and Virginia. There's the Skull Crusher tribe. And then the tribe that actually ranges up and down from through the Carolinas and into northern parts of Georgia is the Horrorwood tribe. As far as like intruding Archie into the setting, that's generally as much as you really need to. You don't want to, if you're trying to run a Dinosaur Swamp campaign, you don't really want to necessarily be dragging the players up north into the Virginias and Maryland and such to deal with the actual Archie storylines. And Archie and Hagen themselves are a bit more focused northward and seaward because, you know, their main issues on their plates would be, you know, Free Quebec and Atlantis out there in the middle of the Atlantic. But, you know, the Cimmerians still give Archie a presence because each and every last one of them is Archie's eyes and ears themselves. You know, sticking like a Cimmerian pariah into Char or something could be a good way to, like, have the characters have a friendly interaction with Cimmerians that could lead to adventure possibilities and that kind of stuff. They'd be a good Deus Ex Machina kind of thing to have in the setting where, you know, characters find themselves at a pinch and they're, you know, fighting dinosaurs or bandits or whatever the hell, and then suddenly the Cimmerians come riding in and save their asses. That'd be kind of a good, interesting way to introduce them and or use them, because they shouldn't necessarily be viewed as antagonistic unless the players are just going out of their way to be belligerent towards them and hostile. Into South Carolina, past Char, you know, there's the Steel Tree Forest, like I mentioned. There's a good section of Piedmont, all sorts of dinosaur species. Part of why I like the setting is, like I was saying, it's very apocalyptic because there's not a lot of like civilization, and so you have to like actually carefully manage your character's stuff because it'll run out or get degraded. Also, I like the presence of dinosaurs because it's both, you know, makes things alien and different and threatening. The characters, you know, feel on edge traveling across the wilderness, knowing there's giant T-Rex out there and all that kind of stuff. But it's not so alien that the players are going to have a hard time, you know, visualizing this stuff and, you know, mentally. Some Rift settings, everything is just so out of whack that unless the players have, like, you know, really invested time to, like, learn the lore of the universe on their own, they might not really know what the hell you're talking about when you're describing things in Atlantis or, you know, some of the more alien spots in England and all that kind of stuff. Dinosaur Swamp with human barbarian psychics, like, that's real easy to get your brain around. So that's in part why I like it. People like understand the threat. They don't have to have explained to them exactly why a Tyrannosaurus Rex or a hyper-intelligent Velociraptor might be a problem for them when they run into one in the forest. The Camp Cherokee is like one of the major Native American reservations in North America. These are descendants of Native Americans that had been taken into into like a spiritual dimensional pocket by a species of like magical beings called the Nunehi, and kind of to keep them preserved because the Nunehi like knew what was coming to North America. So a bunch of them were taken out before, you know, Europe contacted and all that kind of stuff happened. And then after the rifts came and the Dark Age had kind of settled down, the Nunehi had released them back into North America. And so here and there in little spots, you have just this sudden outcropping of just traditional Native American society and culture restored in a way, often back in the actual original lands they had. And so Camp Cherokee is all the Cherokee who were taken off into the spirit world, having been put back in their original, inhabiting zone of North America. Uh, Built on top of like the ruins of, I want to say, like Mariette or some city like that. There's they have access to some old military weapon supplies. They got several ley lines surrounding them. They also, like as I said, like Camp Cherokee is on the other side of the Steel Tree Forest from where Char is located. They're peaceful. They're not out to fuck everything up and take names kind of a thing. They're just trying to like live their lives, but they're in kind of a danger zone. They do have this weird relationship where they think Nero from Ash is a much more important and ancient being than what he actually is. So, they are a little bit naive. Most of them are traditionalists and want to stick to the old ways, but there's a small growing number of them that are renegades and want to adapt more modern technology and use the military hardware they have and get more involved with what's going on at Char. Because like Char is kind of the key to actually like getting any kind of economic civilization engine of commerce up and running. It's just Char has no government. The other little tiny Native American tribe that is found in South Carolina is the Creek. And on top of the other DBs I had mentioned earlier, that's kind of starting to get far enough south that you might find some Lorinoids, which are like these parrot mutants that have escaped from South America and are slowly colonizing the warmer coastal areas of North America and Central America. You might be able to find some little communities of them, kind of from South Carolina on down, hugging the coastline and stuff. So Char, I guess, is the thing I keep dancing around. It's obviously the hub of the entire Carolinas, a subsetting of Dinosaur Swamp. There's, like I said, there's no central government. The city itself is basically kind of there because Charlottesville apparently had been so renovated towards the end of the 21st century before the apocalypse happened that most of its central core downtown buildings all had large mega damage structure facings and stuff on their skyscrapers. It's not just like volume of concrete that makes them mega damage capable structures. They're made out of nanotech printed polymers and plasticized concretes and all the other sites of like tech that we're just kind of theorizing about right now, and still just barely like getting the end of our finger in there in terms of getting that kind of stuff to work. But by the end of the 21st century, it's not that much of a leap to say that we're printing like massive sheets of carbon fiber kind of stuff. And since those buildings are made out of all that, and there wasn't too much earthquake activity right there, and it was just far enough from the shoreline and never really got hit by any of the big tidal waves that came out of the Atlantic when Atlantis just suddenly appeared in the middle of the ocean and displaced all that water. Its downtown relatively survived. Like the interiors of the buildings have like slowly rotted out, but the outer shells are still there, so it's provided kind of a natural point of shelter for like any survivors in the region to huddle around. And so the tiny little population of people that are there are by and large actually descended from the original people of the Carolinas who gathered there in the aftermath of the destruction. About like 25% of them have mutations, but they're still kind of mostly clean human bloodlines. They've had a bit of an influx of mutant animals because the Dinosaur Swamp's far, enough off from the Coalition's immediate radius that it's a safe place for mutant animals to come and just try to find a life for themselves without having to worry about being recaptured and shot or any of that kind of stuff. Also, like the primal nature of the land kind of appeals to them on some sort of instinctive level. So it's there's not just a good amount of dog boys, but you also would have the occasional kill cat or mutant bear and that kind of stuff. Could also potentially wander and be found in Char. Most of the society is divided up into gangs that have basically been controlling the city this whole time. The dominant one is called the Concrete Vipers and is currently run by a young woman. There's a like a reptilian gang, a gang of tech thieves, and a gang of orphan children that's just kind of been sustaining itself, kind of like some Dickensian nightmare, Oliver Twist with railguns kind of stuff. There's like no controlling border commerce, there's no taxes, there's no king, there's no queen. The older, more respected institution that kind of does sit separate from the gangs is the Operators Guild, which is a bunch of basically mechanics turned into priests who do keep what little bit of machinery runs in Char. There's no like ongoing universal electric grid. Like every individual place that has power has to have its own generators and wiring. There's no central plumbing. You know, it's pretty Dark Ages in a lot of ways still. There's a couple of weapons shop. There's like 2 or 3 different competing cyber docks. And so to some degree you might want to like look into like what kind of black market factions might actually be bringing goods into Charlottesville, because it's somehow they are getting weapons and bionic supply parts and all that kind of stuff. It's likely to be visited by people from all around the region, up to and including some oddball stuff like having Haroon pirates in town but aren't there to attack and kill you. They're just there to visit. While they're, in the area dinosaur hunting or hunting for mutants or collecting fairies or whatever for Splugorth weapons tech. And there's like a magic shop and a couple other little basic things like that. The most prominent, pun intended, of Char's, independent business people would be Roma, who's a Cyclops woman, whose history's supposedly shadowy, but there's strong indications that she is a former citizen and or escaped slave from Atlantis and the Splugorth. So I feel like that's the bulk of what you find there. It's a good starting point. There's things to bump into and learn about. There's like potential within Char. Like you can have a whole campaign just about trying to like help Char get its shit back together. You bring in stuff from the Minion War, the threat of Hell Lord Pain and the Hell Pit there. Could like ended up bringing Camp Cherokee and Char's people and a lot of the Barbarians and the Cimmerians all aligned together real quickly. And after taking out that Hell Pit, who knows how much that alliance might stick around and linger and be another thing that might help kickstart Char into becoming a proper civilized place and not just the shadow of its potentiality kind of a thing. I guess I'm gonna do a follow-up video where we're gonna then talk about Georgia and Florida and the stuff that's going on down there. But, for most Dinosaur Swamp campaigns, if the characters are from Dinosaur Swamp, they're going to be starting in the Char region. Or if they're coming into Dinosaur Swamp, that's going to be the first, major area that you're going to run into. So the books you're going to need to pull all that off are obviously the 2 Dinosaur Swamp books. You're going to want a copy of Cimmerian Nation at the bare minimum, or maybe Source Book 1 to supplement that if you do want to get a bit more deeper into Archie. DBs of North America, Rifts Underseas, some of the Atlantean stuff kind of gets more prevalent as you get down into Georgia. However, keeping a copy of Atlantis and a Splend Dimensional Market on hand certainly couldn't hurt. And I guess that does that for now. So hope you enjoyed this. Tell me what you think about Dinosaur Swamp, or if you got a different area of Rift's Earth that you think is like your favorite place for players to adventure in and or just start out in before branching off into the greater megaversal madness that is this game. And other thoughts, just tell me that kind of stuff in the comment section below. Be sure to hit like and subscribe. And as always, stay waspinated.